More creatures. The final stand was only the beginning, the unseen strength. The forest was quiet again, but the silence felt heavy. Ethan and the princess stood side by side, staring at the monster's lifeless body in the ditch. Smoke rose from its wounds, curling into the mist. For a moment, they allowed themselves to breathe, to believe it was finally over. But above the treetops, the sky glowed with unnatural light. Faint red shapes blinked in the clouds, like eyes watching from above. The princess's expression hardened. "They know," she whispered. "The swarm knows. This was only one hunter." Ethan wiped the blood from his arm, his face pale but steady. "Then we'll fight again." The princess turned toward him, her emerald eyes glowing in the dark. "You don't understand. They will send more. Not one, not 10, thousands. No human could stand against that." Ethan gave a small, tired smile. Maybe not against thousands, but standing against one was supposed to be impossible too, wasn't it? The princess fell silent. His words carried a truth she couldn't deny. She had seen him bleed, stumble, and falter, yet he never gave up. That was his strength, not claws, not armor, but something deeper. The ground rumbled faintly. The swarm ship shifted above the clouds, its enormous shadow spreading across the forest. The princess shivered. "My people. They called humans weak," she said softly. "They said you were fragile, short-lived, unworthy of the stars. But now," her voice trembled, "now I see it. Your strength is unseen. It isn't in your body, it's in your spirit." Ethan looked at her, surprised. He wasn't used to grand words, but he understood the weight in hers. He simply nodded. "Then let's use it." The ship above cracked the sky with blue light, searching the forest. Trees glowed under the alien beam. The princess hid under her cloak, her bioluminescence dimming. Ethan pulled her down behind the boulder where they had hidden before. "They'll find us," she whispered. "There's nowhere left to run." But Ethan shook his head. His eyes weren't filled with fear anymore. "They'll see me. Not us." The princess's eyes widened. "No, you can't." Before she could stop him, Ethan stood and stepped into the open clearing. The blue light from the ship swept across him, highlighting every detail of his broken, dirt-covered body. His shadow stretched long across the ground. The ship slowed. For a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Ethan raised the broken pipe high above his head, defiant. His voice rang out strong and unshaken. "You want me? Then come down here." The princess's heart pounded. To challenge the swarm was madness. Yet as she watched, something stirred within her, a fire she had never felt before. His strength wasn't in weapons or technology. It was in standing when no one else would. The ship's lights shifted, scanning him. The air grew heavy, vibrating with a strange hum. The princess thought the swarm would fire, ending him instantly. But then, the ship stopped. It hovered silent, its red lights pulsing. The forest glowed in its shadow. And then, as if the stars themselves had turned their gaze away, the massive vessel pulled back into the clouds. Gone. Ethan lowered the pipe slowly, his arm trembling. He let out a long breath. The princess rushed to him, her hands glowing as she pressed them against his wounds. "They left," she whispered in disbelief. "They could have destroyed you, but they didn't. Do you know why?" Ethan's tired smile returned. "Because they saw what you saw, that humans don't stop." The princess's emerald eyes softened, and for the first time since she landed, she smiled back. "No, they saw something greater. They saw your unseen strength." The mist began to clear, the stars returning above them. The forest no longer felt like a cage, but a path forward. Together, they walked into the fading night. Two figures, one human, one alien princess. Both scarred, both changed. The swarm would return one day, stronger and deadlier. But now, the galaxy had seen what one human could do, and that truth was more dangerous than any weapon. The princess whispered as they vanished into the trees. "Ethan, maybe you are not only protecting me, maybe you are protecting us all." Above them, the stars burned brighter. The unseen strength of humanity had been revealed, and it was only the beginning. The boy raised his broken pipe, ready to face it. The princess pulled his arm. "We can't fight it. Not yet." They stumbled back together, deeper into the dark. The monster followed, its glowing eyes burning like two stars of death. And in that endless night, one truth became clear. This was no ordinary hunt. This was survival. The princess's voice trembled as she whispered, "Human, if you fall, I will fall too." The boy didn't look back. He only said, "Then we'll make sure neither of us falls." Behind them, the monster roared again. This was only the beginning. Trust is born. The forest was quiet again, but not in a peaceful way. The silence felt heavy, almost like the trees themselves were holding their breath. The monster's roar had faded into the distance. Yet both the human boy and the alien princess knew it was still out there, waiting, watching. They stopped near an old fallen tree, its trunk hollow and wide enough to crawl inside. The boy guided the princess into the dark shelter, crouching low so their bodies would not be visible. He listened carefully, his ear almost touching the ground, picking up faint vibrations in the soil. The creature hadn't left. It was circling. The princess shivered, holding her cloak tighter around her glowing skin. She looked at the boy, this fragile human who had no armor, no claws, no advanced weapons, yet he stood between her and death without hesitation. Her voice was soft, trembling. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. The boy looked at her for a long moment, then answered simply, "Because you asked me to." The words were plain, almost too plain, but they struck her heart harder than any weapon. In her world, trust was rare. Even among her own kind, promises were hidden under politics, betrayal, and survival. Yet this human who owed her nothing risked everything with no questions asked. She whispered, "But you don't even know who I am." He gave a small, tired smile. "You're someone who doesn't want to die. That's enough for me." For the first time, her fear eased. She saw not just a boy, but a human with a spirit stronger than the monster hunting them. His courage was strange, but it felt real. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed in the distance. Both of them froze. The monster's shadow moved across the mist, its glowing eyes searching. The boy held his breath, his hand gently covering the princess's mouth to silence her. Her heart raced, but she didn't push him away. The monster stopped only a few feet away. Its claws scraped against the ground, sniffing the air. For a moment, the boy thought it had found them. His muscles tensed. If it attacked, he was ready to throw himself at it, no matter the cost. But after a long pause, the creature turned and disappeared into the shadows again. The ground stopped trembling. The princess slowly pulled the boy's hand from her lips. Her emerald eyes glowed softly in the darkness of the hollowed tree. "You would have fought it, even if you knew you couldn't win." The boy shrugged, though his hands were still shaking. "Sometimes you don't need to win. You just need to keep going." The princess's eyes widened. His words sounded simple, but they carried a weight she had never heard before. In her world, strength was measured by power, by victory, by control. But here was a human, fragile and breakable, showing her another kind of strength, the strength to endure. She whispered, "I think I understand now." "This is why humans are feared." The boy looked confused. "Feared by who?" "By the stars," she said softly. "By those who watch us. Because no matter what hunts you, you don't stop." The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was different now, warmer, almost safe. For the first time since her arrival, the princess felt like she wasn't alone. She leaned closer, her voice softer than the wind. "I trust you, human." The boy blinked, surprised. Then without words, he nodded. He wasn't used to being trusted, not by someone so strange, so powerful, so otherworldly. Yet hearing it gave him strength he didn't know he had. Outside, the forest shifted again. The monster's roar came from far away, but it was still near enough to remind them of the danger. They couldn't hide forever. The boy stood, brushing dirt from his clothes. "We need to move before it comes back." The princess followed him, but this time she stayed closer than before. She no longer saw him as just a boy stumbling through the dark. She saw him as something else, an ally, a shield, maybe even a friend. As they walked side by side, the forest seemed less terrifying. The mist still twisted around them, the shadows still moved, and the monster still hunted. But something had changed. Trust had been born between them. And trust was stronger than fear. The princess looked at him again, her eyes glowing softly in the dark. "Tell me your name," she said. The boy hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Ethan," She repeated it like a promise. "Ethan," the monster roared again, shaking the forest. But this time, when they turned toward the sound, they didn't feel as hopeless as before. Together, they felt like they had a chance. The final stand. The night had grown darker. The mist swallowed the trees until the forest looked endless, and the sound of the monster's roars echoed like thunder. Ethan and the princess had run as far as they could, but they both knew running was not enough anymore. The monster would never stop. Ethan's chest rose and fell, his breath sharp, but his eyes never wavered. He turned to the princess, who looked exhausted, her glowing skin dimmer now. "We can't keep running," he said firmly. "It'll catch us again and again. This time, we end it." The princess's emerald eyes widened. "End it? Ethan, you don't understand. That creature was designed to kill. It has no weakness." Ethan gripped the broken pipe tighter in his hand. His knuckles turned white, but his voice was calm. "Everything has a weakness. We just have to find it." For a long moment, the princess stared at him. His words were so simple, but they carried a power she could not ignore. Slowly, she nodded. "Then we fight together." The ground trembled. Branches snapped. The air grew heavy, filled with the stink of burning metal and rot. The monster was coming. Ethan pulled the princess behind a large boulder near a clearing. From there, he looked around quickly, trees leaning, rocks, and a deep ditch hidden under vines. His eyes sharpened. He had a plan. "When it comes," Ethan whispered, "we'll lure it toward the ditch. When it jumps, we trap it." The princess tilted her head. "Trap it with what?" Ethan lifted the sharp stones he had gathered, his hands bleeding slightly from carrying them. "With everything we've got." The roar shook the forest again. The monster stepped into the clearing, its red eyes glowing like fire, its claws scraping the earth. The ground shook with each step as it spotted them. Ethan stood tall, pipe in hand. His voice carried across the clearing. "Come on then." The monster screeched and charged. Ethan and the princess ran to the side, the beast tearing after them. Its tail whipped through trees, its claws ripping soil apart. The sound was deafening. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest, but his focus never broke. He shouted, "Now!" They darted toward the ditch. The monster followed blindly, too fast to notice the trap. At the last second, Ethan and the princess leaped to the side. The monster's massive body plunged forward, crashing into the ditch with a violent crack. The ground shook as it roared, clawing wildly to climb out. "Throw them!" Ethan yelled. The princess grabbed the sharp stones, glowing energy flowing into her hands as she hurled them like spears. Each strike pierced between the monster's armored plates, making it shriek. Ethan, too, slammed the broken pipe down again and again, sparks flying as he struck its head. The monster thrashed, its tail slashing dangerously close. One strike nearly hit the princess, but Ethan shoved her out of the way, taking a cut across his arm. He gritted his teeth but didn't fall. He couldn't. The princess's voice shook. "Ethan, you're hurt." "I'm fine," he lied. His eyes stayed locked on the beast. "We end it here." The monster climbed halfway out of the ditch, roaring in fury. Its glowing red eyes burned brighter, hatred spilling into the air. Ethan's gaze darted to the sharp end of its tail, glowing faintly. He realized it was unstable. "Weakness, hit the tail," he shouted. The princess didn't question him. With a burst of light from her palms, she struck the tail with all her strength. The energy slammed into it, shattering the glowing tip in a violent explosion of sparks and green fire. The monster screamed louder than ever, its body convulsing. It thrashed wildly, tearing apart trees, but the energy burned deeper into its armor. Ethan jumped forward, driving the broken pipe straight into the crack near its eye. The ground shook one final time, then silence. The massive body of the creature collapsed inside the ditch, smoke rising from its wounds. Its glowing red eyes dimmed until they went completely dark. Ethan stood above it, chest heaving, blood dripping from his arm. He almost fell, but the princess caught him. Her glowing eyes were wide with shock and awe. "You did it," she whispered. "No, we did it." Ethan gave a tired smile. "Told you everything has a weakness." The forest was silent now. For the first time, the night felt calm. No roars, no footsteps, no shadows chasing them. Only the quiet whisper of the wind through the leaves. The princess looked at him with something new in her eyes, not just trust, but respect. Maybe even something deeper. "You are not just human," she said softly. "You are more." Ethan shook his head, his voice low. "No, I'm just human. And sometimes, that's enough." Together they stood over the fallen monster, the mist clearing slowly as if the forest itself had been freed. But far above, hidden in the sky, other red lights blinked through the clouds. More ships. His jaw set. "Not if I kill them first." The growls grew louder, echoing through the trees. The shadows of more hunters stretched across the clearing, long and sharp in the moonlight. The chase was only beginning. Human ingenuity. The forest clearing was alive with red lights. Dozens of glowing eyes shifted in the mist, circling closer. The alien girl's breath came fast, her chest rising and falling as fear gripped her. She had seen her people's warriors fall against these hunters. No single soldier, not even from her empire, had survived once they were surrounded. But the human beside her, his face was calm, eyes sharp, studying the shadows. Daniel whispered, "We can't fight them all here. We need ground they don't control." He guided her back into the bunker. The hunters hissed in the distance, their claws scraping tree bark as they followed. Daniel's boots echoed in the tunnels, his hand steady on the lantern. The girl stayed close, clutching her silver garment, her glowing eyes darting nervously at every sound. Finally, Daniel stopped in a wide chamber. The room was filled with broken metal crates, old barrels and torn cables hanging from the ceiling. Dust covered everything, but to Daniel's eyes, it was perfect. He set down the lantern, its glow casting long shadows. "We hold them here," he said simply. The girl shook her head. "There are too many. You cannot win." Daniel gave her a brief look, a small smirk touching his lips. "I don't need to win. I just need to make them regret coming in." She frowned, not understanding. But then she watched as he began moving quickly through the room. He dragged the metal crates to block one hallway, stacked the barrels near the center, and tore loose wires from the walls. His hands moved fast, clever, every motion filled with purpose. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Traps," Daniel said, his voice low but firm. "They have strength. I have brains. That's enough." The girl stood silently watching. She had lived her life surrounded by advanced machines and armies, yet this human, with nothing but scraps, was building defenses out of thin air. He pulled out a small pouch from his belt and sprinkled powder along the ground near the entrance. The girl tilted her head. "What is that?" "Gunpowder," he said. "Flammable. You'll see." The sound of claws echoed closer, the hunters moving through the tunnels. The air grew colder, the smell of burning metal seeping in. Daniel crouched behind a pile of crates and motioned her to stay down. His voice was calm. "When they come, stay behind me. Do not move until I tell you." She wanted to protest, to tell him it was hopeless, but something in his eyes silenced her. He was not afraid. He was focused, ready. The first hunter entered the chamber. Its red eyes glowed in the dim light, claws clicking against the stone floor. It stepped slowly, sniffing the air. Behind it, more shadows shifted, dozens of them moving into the room. Daniel waited, his hand gripping a broken wire. The moment the first creature stepped onto the powder trail, he yanked the wire against the floor. Sparks. The powder lit instantly, a line of fire racing across the ground and exploding into the barrels he had placed. The chamber erupted, flames roared, smoke filled the air, and the hunters shrieked in pain. Armor cracked, eyes dimmed, claws flailed as some fell into the fire. The alien girl gasped, covering her mouth, eyes wide. She had never seen anything like it. He had turned scraps and powder into a storm of fire. But Daniel did not stop. He moved fast, pulling down loose cables and swinging them across a hunter's head. The sparks burned through its armor, and it collapsed with a hiss. Another lunged at him, claws raised. Daniel ducked, rolling under its arm, and drove his knife into its side. black liquid sprayed, sizzling as it hit the floor. The girl stood frozen, her glowing eyes locked on him. This man fought with nothing but simple tools, yet he moved like a force of nature. One hunter broke through the flames and rushed toward her. She screamed, but Daniel was there in an instant. He kicked over a crate filled with metal shards. The crate split open, and sharp pieces scattered across the floor. The hunter stepped on them, stumbling as the shards pierced its legs. Daniel raised his rifle and fired once. The creature dropped. Silence filled the room, broken only by the crackle of fire. Smoke curled toward the ceiling, painting the air in ash and shadow. The girl looked around. Half the hunters lay dead or broken. The rest had retreated into the tunnels, their growls fading into the distance. She turned to Daniel, her voice trembling. "How did you—" Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, his face hard but calm. "You don't need the strongest weapons. You just need to use what you have." Her chest tightened. In her world, warriors relied on technology, armor, and armies. But this human had only his mind and his courage, and he had defeated what she thought was unstoppable. She whispered, almost to herself, "You are different." Daniel gave her a quick glance. "Different enough to keep you alive." For the first time since the crash, she felt something strange. Not just fear, not just desperation. Hope. But that hope shattered in the next moment. From deep in the tunnels, a sound rumbled. Heavy, slow footsteps echoed, shaking the walls. The flames flickered, and the air grew colder. The girl's eyes widened. She knew that sound. Her voice broke as she whispered, "They have sent the beast." Daniel's grip tightened on his knife. His face turned grim, but his eyes burned with fire. "Then I'll kill the beast," he said. The ground shook again, dust raining from the ceiling. In the darkness ahead, two massive red eyes opened. The true hunt was about to begin. The monster in the dark. The forest was no longer quiet. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound sharper than before. A cold wind moved through the trees, carrying with it a smell that was strange and heavy, like burning metal mixed with rotten earth. The alien princess held her breath, her glowing eyes searching the darkness. Beside her, the human boy tightened his grip on the broken metal pipe he had picked up earlier. It wasn't much, but in his hands it looked like a weapon. His heartbeat was fast, but his steps were steady. He knew something was out there. A low growl echoed from the woods. It wasn't the sound of any normal creature. It was deep, vibrating through the ground, almost as if the earth itself was warning them. The princess whispered, "It's here." The boy didn't answer. He raised his hand, signaling her to stay low. The glow from her body made them visible in the dark, so she covered herself with part of her silver cloak. For the first time, she looked scared. Not as a princess, but as a girl who didn't know if she would live to see another sunrise. The sound came again, closer this time. Branches snapped, leaves shivered. Something massive moved through the forest. The boy squinted his eyes, and through the mist he saw it. Two red eyes burning in the dark like coals. Then the rest of it stepped into view. The creature was taller than both of them combined, its body covered in black, chitin-like armor that reflected faint blue light from the sky. Long claws scraped the ground as it moved, and its mouth opened to reveal sharp, uneven teeth dripping with green liquid. A long tail swung slowly behind it, sharp at the end like a spear. The princess whispered, "It's a hunter." The boy felt his throat tighten, but he forced himself to speak. "If it bleeds, we can stop it." His voice was calm, though fear gnawed at his chest. The monster let out a piercing scream that shook the trees. Birds exploded into the sky, fleeing the forest. Then, without warning, it charged. The ground shook with each step. The boy grabbed the princess's hand and pulled her to the side just as the monster crashed through the spot where they had been standing. Trees snapped under its weight, dirt flew into the air. They ran, weaving between the thick trees. But the monster was fast, too fast. Its claws tore through bark, its tail sliced the air just inches from them. The princess stumbled, and the boy caught her before she fell. He pulled her close, whispering, "Don't stop, not now." But the monster wasn't chasing blindly. It was hunting. Each step it took seemed planned, pushing them toward a darker part of the forest where the mist was so thick that even the stars above couldn't be seen. The boy's mind raced. He knew they couldn't outrun it forever. They needed a plan. They needed something. Then he saw it, a deep ravine cutting through the forest floor, hidden by mist. He pulled the princess toward it. "This way!" The monster roared and followed, its eyes glowing brighter. The boy grabbed a fallen branch and threw it into the ravine. The sound echoed, tricking the monster for a moment. It paused, tilting its head, confused. "Now," the boy whispered, pulling the princess down behind a thick rock. They crouched, holding their breaths. The monster's red eyes scanned the mist, glowing brighter as it searched. The silence stretched. The only sound was the monster's heavy breathing and the low hum of its tail dragging against the ground. Then, crack! A branch snapped under the princess's foot. The monster's head shot toward them. The boy pushed her back just as the creature lunged, its claws slashing the rock in half where they had been hiding. Dust and stone flew into the air. The boy grabbed a sharp stone and swung with all his strength, hitting the monster's face. Sparks flew as the stone struck its armor. The creature reeled back with an angry scream. It wasn't hurt badly, but it was distracted. "Run!" he shouted. The princess hesitated, staring at him. For a moment she saw something in his eyes, a fire she had never seen before. He was just a human boy, weak compared to the monster, but he stood his ground as if he had the power of an entire army. The monster roared again, louder, angrier. The mysterious arrival. The night was quiet. The forest stood in silence under the silver moon, only the sound of leaves moving in the cool wind. A lone human walked along a dirt path. He was a soldier once, now only a wanderer. His name was Daniel. He carried no great weapon, only a knife and an old rifle on his back. Then the sky broke open. A blinding flash lit up the heavens, followed by a deafening boom. Fire streaked across the night like a falling star, crashing into the woods not far from him. The ground shook and birds rose in a cloud of panic. Daniel froze, staring at the fire trail. He knew it was not a star. Something had fallen from the sky. Without a second thought, he ran toward the smoke. His boots crushed the wet leaves, his breath heavy in the cold night air. The forest glowed with a strange light ahead, blue and red, like fire but not fire. When he reached the clearing, he stopped in awe. Before him lay a broken ship, half buried in the earth. Metal plates hissed with steam, and sparks danced like fireflies. Its shape was not of any human craft. It looked alive, like a beast of metal with torn wings, and there, crawling out from the wreck, was a figure. Daniel gripped his rifle, eyes narrowing. The figure was not human. A young woman, her skin pale with a faint shimmer as if touched by starlight. Her eyes glowed like emerald fire, wide with fear. Strange markings ran along her arms, glowing faintly. A crown-like band rested upon her head, cracked from the crash. She was breathing hard, her silver clothing torn. She looked at Daniel, startled. For a long moment, neither moved. Finally, Daniel lowered his rifle slightly. "You are not from here," he said softly. The alien girl's lips trembled. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Human." Daniel gave a slow nod. She staggered, almost falling. Daniel rushed forward and caught her before she hit the ground. Her body was cold yet light, as if she was not fully flesh. She looked up at him with eyes full of terror. "Can you protect me, human?" she asked, her voice shaking. The question struck him like thunder. He had seen war, he had fought enemies, but never had anyone asked him this with such fear. He opened his mouth to answer, but before he could, a deep sound echoed through the woods, a low growl, mechanical yet alive. The princess's eyes widened in horror. She clutched his arm tightly. "They are coming," she whispered. Daniel looked around, rifle ready. Shadows moved in the misty trees, shapes tall and twisted, their glowing eyes like burning coals. He saw 4 of them. They were hunting her. The air grew colder. The alien girl pulled closer to him, her body shaking. Daniel's heart pounded, but his face stayed calm. He had been hunted before. He knew the feeling of being prey. But this time, he was not alone. He whispered to her, "Stay behind me." The creatures stepped closer, their movements slow and deliberate. Their bodies were wrapped in black armor that looked like living bone, long claws scraping against the earth. One of them raised its head and hissed, the sound cutting through the night like knives. Daniel raised his rifle, the metal cold against his hands. He fired. The shot echoed like thunder. One creature fell back, sparks flying from its chest. But the others did not stop. Their glowing eyes locked onto the girl. Daniel grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the trees. "Run!" he shouted. They ran through the forest, the sound of claws and heavy steps chasing them. The girl stumbled, but Daniel held her up, guiding her through the dark. Branches whipped against his face, roots twisted under his boots, but he did not stop. Behind them, the hunters moved faster. They were closing in. The alien girl gasped for breath, her voice broken. "You cannot fight them. They will kill us both." Daniel's eyes burned with stubborn fire. "We'll see about that." They reached an old structure hidden deep in the woods, half buried and forgotten. A bunker from the old wars. Daniel kicked the rusted door open and pulled her inside. The air was damp and smelled of decay, but it was shelter. He shut the door behind them, pressing his back against it. Outside, the creatures growled. Their claws scraped the metal door, sending a shiver through the bunker walls. The princess looked at him, her glowing eyes wide with fear. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle. His voice was steady, calm, almost cold. "Because you asked me to." The bunker went silent for a heartbeat. Then came a sound, heavy footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling outside. Something much larger had arrived. The girl's lips trembled. She whispered, "They sent the hunter." Daniel's eyes narrowed. He checked his weapon and drew his knife, his face hard as stone. "Let them come." The night swallowed them in silence, broken only by the sound of breathing and the distant growl of something monstrous waiting in the dark. The chase begins. The bunker walls shook. Dust fell from the ceiling as the metal door groaned under the weight of claws, scratching and pounding from the outside. Daniel kept his back pressed against the cold steel, rifle ready in his hands. His breathing was calm, steady, even though his heart pounded like drums in his chest. The alien girl stood a few steps away, her glowing emerald eyes fixed on him. Her silver clothes shimmered faintly in the dim light of the bunker. She looked frightened but also curious. She had never seen a human who stood so calmly while monsters hunted him. Outside, the growling grew louder. A deep voice, distorted and unnatural, hissed through the cracks. It was not words, not a language she understood, but she felt its meaning in her bones. They were calling her name. They had found her. Daniel pushed himself away from the door and scanned the dark corners of the bunker. It was small, damp, and filled with broken crates and rusted machines. Not much cover, but enough to hide for a short while. "They won't stop," the girl whispered. Her voice trembled, like a child who had seen too much fear. "They will hunt me until I am dead." Daniel glanced at her. "Then they'll have to get through me first." Her eyes widened. No soldier of her people had ever spoken like that. To them, she was only a prize, a target, something to guard or capture. But this human, he spoke as if her life truly mattered. The door screeched. Metal bent inward as something heavy slammed against it. Daniel motioned for her to stay low. He crouched beside the wall, aiming his rifle at the entrance. His hands were steady, his eyes sharp. The door burst open with a deafening crash. 3 figures stormed in. Their armor glistened like whetstone, black and jagged, with eyes that glowed red in the shadows. Their long claws scraped against the floor as they stepped forward. The air filled with the smell of burning metal. Daniel fired. The gunshot roared inside the bunker, echoing like thunder. One creature dropped, sparks bursting from its chest where the bullet struck. The others hissed, their voices shrill and inhuman. The girl covered her ears, but her glowing eyes never left Daniel. He did not hesitate, did not panic. He moved with precision, every shot placed with deadly intent. But the creatures were fast. One leapt to the side, dodging his bullet, and charged at him with claws raised. Daniel rolled across the floor, the claws striking sparks against the wall where his head had been a second earlier. He raised his knife and drove it deep into the creature's neck. Black liquid sprayed across the floor, hissing like acid as it burned through the stone. The creature shrieked and collapsed, twitching. Daniel pulled his knife free and turned to the last one. It lunged toward the girl, its claws reaching for her throat. "No!" Daniel roared. He slammed into the beast, tackling it to the ground. The two wrestled in the dark, claws against steel, teeth snapping inches from his face. The human gritted his teeth, forcing the barrel of his rifle under the monster's jaw. With a burst of fire, he pulled the trigger. The body went limp. Silence returned, broken only by Daniel's heavy breathing. The girl stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. She had never seen such violence, such raw survival. Yet she had also never seen such courage. He was only human, fragile compared to her people, but he fought like a storm. Daniel wiped the black blood from his face and stood. He looked at her, his voice steady. "We can't stay here. More will come." She hesitated, then nodded. "Where will we go?" He slung his rifle over his shoulder and grabbed a small lantern from the wall. Its faint glow lit up the damp hallway that led deeper underground. "Away from here, follow me." "Stay close." The girl followed, her footsteps soft behind his. The bunker's hallways twisted like a maze, walls covered in rust and moss. The air was thick and heavy. Every sound echoed, the drip of water, the crunch of gravel under their boots, the distant rumble of something moving above them. The deeper they went, the darker it became. Daniel's lantern flickered, casting long shadows. The girl shivered. "You are not afraid?" she asked softly. Daniel did not answer right away. His eyes scanned every corner, every dark passage. "Fear keeps you alive," he finally said. "But it can't control you." Her heart stirred. These words were strange to her, but powerful. They reached another steel door at the far end of the hallway. Daniel pushed it open. Cold night air rushed in. They had found a back exit leading out into the forest. For a brief moment, the girl felt hope. But then from the trees came the sound of heavy footsteps. Not just one, many. The forest glowed faintly with red lights, dozens of eyes moving closer. Daniel pulled her back against the bunker wall, lowering the lantern. His face was calm, but his mind raced. Too many, too fast. They were surrounded. The girl clutched his arm, whispering, "We cannot escape." "They will kill us." Daniel looked at her.